Welcome, everybody, to episode 2 of the Sharegiver Solutions podcast. I'm Rob. This is my brother, David. And in podcast 1, we gave an overview of the Sharegiver Solutions approach to caring for someone with dementia and the 3 particular elements of the program are mindset, game plan, and network. And please, if you didn't hear the first podcast, check it out. And today we're going to explore in a little more depth mindset, which is so critical for someone who finds themselves in the difficult position of caring for a loved one suffering from dementia. So, David, why don't you break mindset down a little bit and let's get into it.
Sure. Okay, well, mindset is really the threshold, sort of the way into Sharegiver Solutions. We talk about mindset, which is the state of mind that the caregiver has as he approaches his role and his job, both in terms of how he can do the best job caring for his partner, as well as how he can enhance his own life. And so it's both of those things. And we break mindset itself down into 3 elements, or 3 kinds of mindset. One is a mindset that cultivates resilience. It is a Stoic approach to the job, i.e., having a mind that doesn't allow itself to get bent by the circumstance, that accepts the reality of the situation or circumstance and finds ways to work around it, to reframe it, to anchor it to another reality that enables the caregiver to be resilient.
Now, you said, one of the first things you just said is almost counterintuitive, to enhance their life,
Right.
having become the caregiver.
Right.
Typically we would think you want to just get through your life as a caregiver. A, how does one enhance their life? And I think you're going to explain that. And B, can you train somebody to be resilient?
Yeah. Good questions. Let's take it in reverse order. The first kind of mindset, as I said, is resilience, is a Stoic's approach. And I absolutely believe that there are clear techniques that you can learn and apply and practice. And the more you practice them, the more able you are in a moment that might otherwise engender a reaction or anger or frustration. Well, you're trained. You train yourself to respond differently. As an example that just happened, my wife Barbara has a habit now of wandering, which is very common to people with dementia, wandering both in the house and outside. So when she's in the house, she'll wander around the house and might grab or touch or handle anything that she sees unconsciously. And in this case, she handled, unfortunately, a sculpture that we had on our table that is something that, we both love. In fact, she helped pick it out years ago. And she dropped it and it broke. The old me might have said initially something like, how could you? How could you do that?
What are you doing? Yeah.
What are you doing? And she would probably respond with no affect at all, because she doesn't really appreciate what she did.
Yeah.
And there's no real point to my saying that. And it just makes me feel bad and makes her feel bad, because typically she would then get angry at me for getting angry at her. The Stoic approach to it would see this as a challenge that I have rehearsed, that I have practiced for, almost like training for a competition. How are you going to respond to this terrible circumstance? Getting judged on how you respond. So you can train a mindset to anticipate these things and hear yourself saying, sweetheart, that I'm really sorry you did that, but, it's only a thing.
Let me roll it back a little bit.
Yeah.
The first thing, it seems to me, that needs to happen is acceptance of your situation.
Correct.
And the desire to accept it and to be the best caregiver you can.
Yeah,
that's a hurdle.
It's a recognition that getting angry or frustrated is, doesn't help anything.
Well, even before that, again, rolling it back to not the diagnosis, because you were both acutely aware at that point, but the not just acceptance of the situation and the challenge.
Yeah, so the part of the Stoic mindset, and there's some great resources on this that I'd be happy to prepare, and maybe we'll include it as an appendix to the podcast, is seeing it sort of as a challenge, almost like the Stoic gods are watching and seeing how you react to this. And there are clear techniques that are essentially called reframing, workaround, and anchoring. And
so talk about reframing.
Yeah, so reframing is you are in this moment that might otherwise excite your anger or frustration, and you frame it differently. You understand that she couldn't help herself. This is, unfortunately, this is one of her behaviors that rather than getting angry, you understand that she wants things. She wants to touch. She's almost like bright objects. So you reframe it. You also reframe it and say, this could be a lot worse. She could have left something in the microwave that blows up or turns on the stove. So you reframe what happened so you're no longer angry. You understand what's going on, and you are happy that it wasn't worse than this. That's also another term for that is anchoring to another reality. Like people say, yeah, I got sick, but I'm not dead.
Yeah.
It could always be worse. And this is, we understand, but this is a basic technique of resilience, too.
Well, the irony, and again, the purpose to Sharegiver Solutions is really focusing on the benefits and the well-being for the sharegiver, the caregiver,
right,
with the understanding that once you're more able to deal with a difficult situation, which calms you down and makes you less angry and less reactionary, it's obviously going to help your partner.
Right. So this is sort of the second aspect. The last thing I would say as a technique is what I would call workaround, where you learn as a caregiver in time that everything that happens, there's a way to work around it rather than getting angry. And your mind starts to automatically, cast whatever's happened in a way that makes you feel better and your partner feel better. And so I love that concept of working around
Give me an example.
So an example is, we might be out for a ride and, and Barbara, who has difficulty in communicating, we stop at a light and she might start to get out of the car. I might have previously said, what are you doing? And now I would work around that. I would, quietly say, Barb, close the door. We're not there yet. When we're there, you can get out, close the door, help me put your seatbelt on. She may or may not do it. But rather than, get excited and yell at her and have a scene, this also happens when we're in a store. One great technique from not driving is to stop, and she may, be acting out in a store, is to go up to her in the store, put my arms around her. Invariably, she will put her arms around me, hug her, and the moment passes. And I've worked around it in the simplest of ways.
Yeah.
But rather than getting really pissed off or embarrassed or hustling her out of the store, which I might otherwise feel like doing.
It seems like in every situation like that, there's that moment where either it escalates or it de-escalates.
Correct.
And,
Correct.
And it's a simple action, it seems, that can de-escalate it. But if you don't go that way, it's a bad situation.
And the interesting thing as a caregiver, having practiced this over the years, is it applies to virtually everything else. I don't really lose it like I might have in the past over things that at the end of the day are, not meaningful.
Yeah, it's a perspective check.
Yeah. So the second aspect of mindset, or the second kind of mindset, is what I call the growth mindset. And this is a situation where not only do you accept the reality of your situation, but you see an opportunity to learn, to grow, to nourish your own imagination about it, your curiosity. So you see this situation you're in as an opportunity rather than as a burden or a sentence.
Yeah.
And in my case, for example, because, I am curious, number one, I saw the opportunity to try to learn more about the situation, and not necessarily the science of the disease, although I am interested, but the way people respond to this disease, and also the way it can be prevented, if not cured, because my curiosity was about my own life. How, seeing this, do I make sure it doesn't happen to me? What can I do? So I nourish my own learning about something that's important. And what happens, it also makes me an advocate for other people, especially younger people in my family, my daughters, my nieces, nephews. So it's really valuable. And you find you're converting a situation that now you're learning and you're teaching at the same time. Relatedly, as a caregiver, I learn techniques or innovative ways to deal with this that I might not have, but I'm using my imagination. So Barbara doesn't speak in a way that's coherent often, and I'm spending a lot of time with Barbara, and I miss conversations. So I might invent a conversation, and in doing that, I'll take a subject, for example, that I'm interested in, like artificial intelligence. And I'll create a two-way conversation while we're in the car for a while. Barbara doesn't necessarily know what I'm talking about, but she's interested. She's always interested because I'm including her in the conversation. If I'm not including her, if I'm just on the phone, or I'm talking with you and she's sitting inside, she can get very frustrated right away.
Yes.
So I learn as a technique how to both pass the time, but pass the time in a way that's edifying to me.
Yeah.
I'm learning something about my own subject.
It seems to me all of this, excuse me, goes beyond Stoic. Stoic is kind of
this is growth.
Okay, this is what I got to do, so I'm not going to cry about it, and I'm just going to do it. You take it to a higher level, and you actually train yourself to embrace it.
Correct.
This is what I'm going to do, and God damn it, I'm going to do it well and enthusiastically.
I mean, again, this applies to life generally.
Yeah.
But if you see your daily experience as an opportunity always to develop your own knowledge, to grow your own interests, to nurture your own imagination and curiosity, if that's your mindset, then you are doing all those things, and you're better for it. Well, what more important than in a situation that's otherwise stultifying, deadening, numbing, is to apply the same thing, and you find that you are not enjoying it. And listen, I also don't want to sugarcoat this, because there are some really hard times where no matter what, you are going to labor through it. And ultimately, your mindset has to be one of compassion, because you're dealing with somebody that's really suffering, and the best you can do is to be compassionate. That's a mindset as well. And that's a fundamental mindset of caregiving or share giving is, compassion.
Compassion
But
and empathy.
But in almost all cases, there is a way for us to advance our own learning and knowledge and curiosity.
Again, I guess my not cynical side, but devil's advocate, if you're not, I know you. You are a serial curious person.
Right.
Voracious reader, always have been. If that's not your nature, how can you develop that mindset? I think typically if it is your nature, this is a simpler thing to grasp.
Correct.
If it's not your nature and you're not necessarily
That's a great
stoic by nature.
Listen, it's a great question, and it really applies to everything we're going to be talking about in this podcast series, because we call these Sharegiver Solutions.
Yes.
So we are presuming that much of this is not natural or,
Innate.
intuitive.
Yeah.
And in fact, a lot of it's counterintuitive, because somebody could say, it's hard enough for me to just deal with what I'm dealing with. You want to layer onto me all of this other stuff.
In addition to everything I'm doing.
I don't think I can do it.
Yeah.
So one of the things that we will share in this series are very specific techniques, almost like drills that you can do when you're in a situation that makes it easier for you to deal with it, but also shows you how you can learn while you're doing it. And so all I can say is, yes, you're right. For a lot of people that may not have that proclivity to being curious and all, they can train that, because once they understand that it's going to make it easier and better in their share giving. If you don't see a benefit, then it is just a burden.
It will expand them.
Correct.
As a human being.
Correct.
Yeah.
So, there's so many aspects to this that I think lend themselves to learning. And one, as I said, that more recently has really impressed itself upon me is what I call the science of prevention. I've become, so interested in all of those things that can help prevent this, both for myself and for everybody that I can talk to. Basically diet, fitness, neural growth, getting enough sleep, which I don't do, and managing stress. And there's a science behind all of these things, which I find fascinating and compelling.
Yeah.
So it's just one thing that, as a share giver, it arms me with more knowledge and also makes me feel better.
Well, it occurred to me as you were speaking that certainly compassion is the foundation for everything, but it's compassion for your partner as well as compassion for yourself.
Right.
And again, that's what we're talking about, and they are so interrelated.
Yeah, these words like, patient is suffering, means suffering. Compassion is caring for one who suffers. Patience is patient, is being patient. All these words are around these same roots. And, it's one of the things that, are part of the things that we learn in how to do this and make it easier on ourselves.
Yeah, for our listeners, David came about these philosophies by virtue of having inherited this job. You know, you didn't start out as the compassionate, eager, curious, empathetic. I think you were always compassionate and empathetic, but you weren't this proactive caregiver that you are now, and you've conditioned yourself. So that's kind of our purpose with Sharegiver Solutions, is to help people in doing that.
So it leads to sort of the third aspect of mindset, because, and again, it's not something that everybody naturally thinks about, but I call it the strategic mindset. So it's the mindset that says, okay, this is my job. this is the role I'm in. How do I do it that it's really successful? How do I become successful in this? And it requires sort of a simple analysis, but one that, requires some time and attention.
How do you define success?
So if you say, and so we again have sort of a format for this that I think can be helpful, which basically goes through to break it down most simply. If I'm really successful as a caregiver, what's the most important elements of that? What would be if I'm really successful, what does that look like? What am I experiencing or achieving?
What does it look like for you?
For me?
Yeah.
If I'm really successful, I am making sure that my partner is safe and has the best opportunity to experience, pleasure or joy in her life. That's number one. Number two, if I'm successful, then I'm able to continue to pursue happiness for myself and experience it almost in a parallel life to my life as a caregiver. And I'm feeling energized, and I'm learning, and I'm growing. These are things that would be really important to me. So for any of us, and maybe we would have different things that would define success. Then we think, okay, once I've defined those, what are the preconditions for that? What enables me to achieve that kind of success? So then I take it a step back. What are those things? In that case, I have to make sure that I have the resources or access to the resources to make sure that my wife is safe, and that I've thought about what are the things that would make her happy, even in the most limited ways. And so I make sure those things are available. How do I make myself happy? Okay, well, I have to evaluate what is it that would make me happy while I'm doing this. And in my case, it's finding the time to serve certain interests that I have, whether it's reading or conversation with people, whatever it is, and then doing those things that enable that. And maybe I have to make sure that I'm creating time, that I'm getting some assistance that gives me time to pursue those things. But I'm, being clear with what are the things that I need to have or to do in order to enable me to be happy. And then I would say part of this strategic analysis or mindset is, how do I fail? What are the things that would cause me to fail? And relatedly, what are the things, if I do it, it almost assures success in this role? These are all kind of things that you might do for a business or for any kind of undertaking. Well, you are in an undertaking.
Or any relationship.
And then finally, I would want to ask myself, if I am successful, as I said right at the top, then what is that going to allow me to do? What does that give me? Because I think it's really valuable to focus on what is the result of being successful in this role. And again, I don't want to short circuit it in terms of my own analysis, but obviously, I think fundamentally, in a very difficult situation, it enables me to feel good about myself and feel, positive about the job that I'm doing, recognizing that for many of these things, like dementia, it's a progressive disease. And that's also part of, what I'm doing is I am conditioning myself for what inevitably becomes end-of-life issues. But
yeah, that was my next point, was that as a reminder to myself and the audience that this is an arc. This is a journey. So all of the things you're talking about, all your strategic thinking, your mindset is all kind of predicated on where you are at that point in this journey, and understanding that success is not a happy ending.
Correct.
That's not success. It's not a cure.
Yeah.
So that's got to be in your mind, and that's your perspective on what success is, as you
Correct.
described.
I mean, it's a great point, and to say it again, there's no sugarcoating of this. And while I think the techniques that we're talking about would apply to anybody in whatever their situation is, it's not to say that it makes it easy.
Right. It's not easy.
We're not trying to make it easy.
Yeah.
We're trying to prepare one's mind to be resolute.
We're trying to make it positive.
Yeah, make it positive. And that really is, at the end of the day, a Stoic philosophy, which I think is fundamental to this, is that what poisons one's life is feeling resentment, anger, frustration. This is what generates all the kinds of affliction in one's body that causes you to get sick in many ways.
Well, and another, contributor to that is loneliness, which is something we'll be addressing when we talk about networks.
Absolutely. And networks, and it also goes to mindset. Part of your mindset, one of the things that's important to you if you're succeeding in this role is you want to be happy. And so many people are lonely. So when you think that you can articulate that, and you can say, I want to be happy, then what are the things, you take it a step back, that would enable you to be less lonely or to be happier? Inevitably, that means having human relationships that are nourishing, or inputs, intellectually and
Conversations.
Conversations.
It occurs to me, we hear the expression so often at the end of the day, but that can almost be taken literally in this case. To have a good day is a success.
Correct. And there's a Marcus Aurelius, one of the great Stoics, is most famous probably for a single phrase, I might leave tonight. I might leave tonight. So let's do something with this day.
Yeah.
That's positive. Okay. So, again, there's more to this that we will cover in greater depth in subsequent podcasts, and we're also going to have guests that can address this.
No question.
Very specifically.
Yeah, you're certainly not the only one going through it.
And people
but
much more expert.
I think it's clear that you're not saying, and we're not saying, it's an easy thing to do. But if it's something you are going to do, you may as well do it to gain the greatest benefit for yourself and the loved one you're caring for.
Right. Okay.
Nice job.
Thanks.
Thanks for joining us, and we'll be back with episode 3.